The more you try to keep me down and keep my head above the water, you can never hold me down. The more you try to block me out, that's where I kick the wall down. You can never hold me back. The more you try to put me out, the more I'll be blazing, it's too hot. The more you try to put me in the dirt, increase my work, the expert. You see the hunger in the eyes of a survivor. Swallowed my pride, washed down with some...
Good morning, everybody. It's Casey with Pinecase. Happy Friday, everybody. I don't get to hang out on here very often on, well, any other days other than Tuesday and Thursday, I guess. So it's kind of nice to be able to kick it with everybody before the weekend. Just Robb is hanging out with us today. It is such an honor. I noticed that when we tried to go live before, there was a lot of people that were really interested in this conversation for a few different reasons. So I'm really excited to be able to bring that to everybody today. Yeah. How's it going?
Excellent.
Good.
A little uncomfortable because I'm used to being on stage and presenting an image or a persona, and so being a little more emotionally honest is uncomfortable for me, but I welcome it.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. Lately, we've had a lot of people calling in on the hotline and in our DMs about kind of the stigma that goes along with mental health and maybe just navigating some of like the tools and the feelings that go along with that. And they're like, oh, I really want to comment on your stuff, or I really want to like, share your content, but I don't want anyone to think that there's anything wrong. And I'm like, that's a problem. That's a problem. It's a problem when people feel like talking about their anxiety is an issue.
Yeah. If you had a cast on or a broken arm, you wouldn't have anything to be particularly embarrassed about unless you did something really foolish. But you wouldn't be ashamed of it. You know what I mean? Like it's the same thing. Health is health.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you had a cast on, you'd be like, oh, everyone signs it. It's fun. You get different colors. You kind of like, put it out there. But it seems to be when it comes to talking about things that are, that you can't see.
Yeah.
That's the issue. And I mean, there's a lot of history with that, and we can, get into like what it is to be, to talk about mental health specifically with men for hours. It's always kind of been that thing where like, you got to suck it up and deal with it, or, you can't, you're not allowed to cry, or, whatever it is. But I feel like these conversations are particularly important for the youth that are coming up that are like, I wish I could talk to my friend, but I don't know how he'll take it. And when they see people like you, like Surreal, like Moma Sherry coming on here, and they're like, wait a second, I really look up to that guy.
Yeah.
I love what they're doing. I love their music. Oh wait, and they go through the same thing that I go through. Like it's profound. And it's why I appreciate you guys coming on here so much, because it really does make a massive difference.
And that's the biggest motivation to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit, because when we were talking originally, the first time we went to go on, and you said something and it completely caught me off guard. And you said, I was at a Pinecase event. And I was like, wait a second. It's so cool because there's all these really great events that happen, and we get to, sponsor them and partner with them and sometimes put them on. And we're just so honored to be a part of the community, the music community, the mental health community, and all these conversations that happen and events that happen. But when you said that, it actually caught me in my feelers a little bit, because I was like, wait a second, people are going to these events and they get to have these experiences. And I don't always make it to them, unfortunately. Not all of them are near me. That's the lovely, the glory of kind of the reaching hand of the internet, is a lot of these things happen virtually for me. But to have it come back in real time, I was like, how special is that? How amazing is that? Can you tell me a little bit about the experience that you had at the Campbell block party?
Well, it was definitely interesting for me. It's the first time that I remember playing completely sober, and mostly just because it was at 7 o'clock until 8 o'clock was my slot, and I was bringing my son with me.
Oh,
so
okay.
it was because it was a family event. And so I wanted to make sure that, I had all my faculties around about me, and that my son's first experience would be a positive experience. So I hadn't played since my son was born. Since he was about 1, I guess. I transitioned out of DJing for a while just to focus on being a parent. And so for me, it was a chance to take my son to see a lot of the artists that I'd played with for a long time, and then they all recognized me eventually after I started dancing and being more relaxed. And then everyone started remembering, oh, that's Robb.
Yeah.
And then so having my son's face light up, and it was great. It was a good experience. And a bit of a shout out to Matt Surreal. I
yes.
asked my son at the end of the show who his favorite artist was, and he said Surreal. So tip of the hat to you.
That's awesome. Yeah, Surreal's such a team player. He's really making such an impact on the West Coast music scene.
Yeah.
And he's also part of the community in such a broad way right now. Like, he's been hanging out at Saratoga Speedway with his racing, which is really cool. So he's been promoting like that family-friendly local business, which is just kind of a staple for all of us kids of, you know, Vancouver Island, or at least like the north side of Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
And just, you know, the awareness that he does in his everyday life. So yeah, he's just really good people. I'm always excited to like have him on or have him be a part of those Pinecase events. It's really exciting. We're also really excited to have you be part of some of the Pinecase events. And it's because you bring a little bit of like life experience, but also like professional knowledge. And so I have a few questions, but I would really like to start off, if you don't mind, just giving us a little bit of a run through of maybe like your personal life and kind of what led up to you making the choices to be in the career that you're in, and also the career that you're in, because both of them are amazing.
Okay, well, way back, I was working on the oil rigs. I got suspended, came back, and a friend of mine asked if I could watch his back at a bar that he was working at, the Voodoo Lounge, as a bouncer. So I went to bounce for him, and this was in the 90s, way back when the Voodoo first opened. And then I got let go from there. And so I went to apply at the Loft, and they said I was too small to be a bouncer. So I went to Jiggers, and they were in receivership. They're only open on Wednesdays and Thursdays. That's it. So they hired me on as a bouncer. And after a few months, the DJ never showed up for work. So they asked me if I could they just showed me how it works and asked me to cover. And so from that point, the Loft went out of business. We went to purchasing the bar because it was in receivership at the time. Then I left there and went to Nanaimo to work at the press room for about 4 years.
Very cool.
And so we started on the Sunday nights, and I was the opening night on DJ on Bathtub Weekend. And the headliner was playing at a rave and didn't make it back in time. So unfortunately, back then I was mixing one track to one shot. So by the time the headliner wasn't on, I was a mess.
Oh my gosh.
I was in my flip flops, and it was Bathtub Weekend, so we were at capacity, and they asked me to go back on stage, and it was just vinyl, and it all went from there.
Wow.
Then back to Jiggers again as a manager and a DJ, and then back to the Voodoo again, and the Paramount Music Hall for another 8 years. So it was great.
So it was kind of out of like necessity.
Yeah, like, just out of not accepting limitations. It's like, here's how you do it, and I figured, all right. And I just thought it was a temporary thing. But when you start to get good at something and you want to learn about something, then you want to get better at it, and there we go.
Oh. I love that. I love that it was like somebody else was like, I'm going to choose this for you. I'm going to choose this for you, and you're going to carry it through your life, and it's going to be a big deal. It's not a big deal right now. So just jump in here. I trust you. You know, essentially with a business, because music really is the make or break part of a lot of places' successes, right? I mean, Campbell River is a small community, so it is a numbers game for sure. But you were absolutely the reason why a lot of us went down there every weekend. I mean, you know,
and before that, we had a show at Jiggers called Wax Wednesday, and it was the longest running DJ night on the island. It went 8 years consecutively, and artists came from all over the province. Even though we had a smaller venue and we usually have between 80 to 250 people dancing, everybody came over from Vancouver, from everywhere, because everybody danced and everybody had a good time. And so artists would come over for less and usually stay at my house, and I would go pick them up and do everything I could to make sure that it would happen. And some of the biggest names that are still playing today in BC all came to Wax Wednesday because it was just one of their favorite shows to play. Like, more intimate venue where everybody danced and everybody had fun.
That's legendary, honestly. It's so cool. When people make the financial sacrifices to be part of something bigger, especially in an intimate venue like that, where like it feels like a little piece of you is part of the production, it's part of the, you know, the atmosphere, the environment. It really changes how people experience their night. And
absolutely. And it wasn't just a financially taking us less money, but it was also a big time commitment, because we were in Courtenay. Most of these guys were coming from Vancouver, Victoria. That's a long haul for less money, you know, like,
Yeah, I didn't even really think about that. It is like, that is a massive,
that's travel, that's everything.
Right. The ferry, the food, right? You got to pay
The
to
time.
live, like the
Yeah.
time. Yeah, that's a whole day and just travel in itself. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, but when you look back at it, you start to realize like the music, especially in small towns like that, it becomes part of like the institutions that are those
Yeah.
communities, right?
Yeah.
Like the DJs. I mean, there was a point in time where it was like, you know, we would be chatting kind of casually amongst ourselves and we're like, okay, well, the DJs are going to be like Rob or Rob. And like that,
Yeah.
that in itself was like a thing, right?
Yeah.
Because it was not that it was like a catchphrase, but it was like something that we knew, something that was
Yeah.
comfortable, something that we could rely on for. And that was a part of luxury, and entertainment is massive, especially in a blue collar town where everybody's working. We're not really getting a whole lot ahead. You know, I mean, there
Yeah.
might be kind of spurts of money here or there when like logging's good or fishing's good or whatever. But we relied a lot on those moments of relief, right? I mean, you're talking about a place where like the blue collar industry was shutting down all around us. Our, you know, our families were getting like laid off in big ways, right? The pulp
Yeah.
mill,
Fishing, logging, mills.
all of them. Yeah, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say all the mills. Yeah, exactly. And so to have those kind of releases were just like super amazing. When, I mean, now we're not all that young, but you know, Jigger is like, it's something that we all know, you know, and it's like I was gonna say the Voodoo Lounge or the, what was it called? The Velvet. Remember, it's called the Velvet.
The Velvet
Club
Club and the Paramount Music Hall. Yeah, the Velvet Club.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for that part.
Oh God.
Yeah, that was part of their rebranding when Jiggers was doing really well.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so before all of that, it was actually called People's. And when it was People's, that's near and dear to everybody's heart. But I have a special connection with it because my dad used to play there all the time.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I mean, those buildings they're amazing. But so to be a part of that, and now you're kind of a part of the community in an equally as important way, maybe even more so. And I don't want to get too far into like the technical parts of it, but can you kind of walk me through a little bit about what you do, and then maybe a little bit about how, you know, I don't want to say cope because that's a strong word, but maybe how we get through some of the stresses of being in that environment all the time.
The new work environment?
Yeah.
Well, mostly I'm on call, but a lot of the shifts I take are what's called a perioperative trauma assistant. So what we'll do is we'll have people that come into the emergency room, and we have to evaluate them over a period of time to see if they're if it's a mental stressors, if they're in crisis, if it's an addiction problem. There's quite a few things that are very similar in the way they present. And also a lot of people find it uncomfortable to be around people in that environment for extended periods of time. So with my experience and background as being a bouncer, and my experience and background working in nightclubs, a lot of the clientele are going through the similar situations or feeling the similar things or experiencing the similar problems. So for me, I'm perfectly comfortable, and I'm able to put people at ease, you know, get to the root of what's bothering them and see if we can get them the help they need. So it's unfortunately a lot of the people I recognize from my previous jobs, but at the same time, being in a small town, no matter what job you have, you're going to recognize people from your previous jobs because that's just the size of the town.
Yeah.
So but there is some overlap.
I wonder if that doesn't maybe benefit you in a little bit, right? It's you know, sympathy is maybe not appropriate for an emergency room, but empathy absolutely is, right?
Yeah.
And so to maybe understand a little bit more in, you know, a little bit more context or even content really to someone's situation maybe makes it a little bit easier to evaluate. Not that you can really kind of pull all that information, but I'm sure it kind of sits somewhere, you know, in the back of your mind. So I think it's kind of important to talk about, and it's not specific to the hospital, but like, especially in that industry, like in the nightlife industry and entertainment industry, whatever, people have a really hard time maybe deciphering things that are like visibly intoxicated or like like a mental emergency, right? And so how do you, like, when you go into it, what are some of the things that like you evaluate that you're like, okay, this isn't.
A good thing is to evaluate person is when they know you're not watching or they feel you're not watching.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of things are very performance oriented or they feel anxious because people are watching them. So if you can make them feel like they're not the focal point or like you're not watching them specifically, even though you are.
Yeah.
You'll see a little more of their natural behavior and a little more of what they're experiencing. So some people will play up a situation, but if a person's having problems with their balance, or they're having problems figuring out where to put their hand or something like that, it makes it easier. Also, the people that are clenching their fists are obviously angry, but the people that go calm and their hands open up, that's when you got to be very aware of what's about to happen, because they've made a decision. They're not battling with something.
Oh,
So
interesting.
those are the people, once they go calm and they just take a deep breath and their hands open up, quite often that means that they've resolved their inner turmoil, or they're about to do something really foolish.
It's actually impressive, because in order to get to those places, you really have to be able to like read people. And obviously that there's like some, some tactics and some skill that comes into it in a professional setting, but to be able to apply that into a DJ setting, into a bouncer setting, into the opposite. So even when you're on stage, or if you're, spinning, to be able to have those eyes in the audience and to be able to like identify and maybe like assist or explain it's really great. I mean, the crossover both ways is great, but I'm looking at it from like an event perspective. That's amazing.
Someone mentioned it from the Jiggers days, how I always managed to keep the crowd at the right capacity and like keep them dancing without dancing themselves out or getting too tired. And it was the same thing. It was just a passive observance. I also made sure that the bartenders' lineups never got shorter than 3 people. So, like you just sort of manipulated the dance floor and the bar lineups to make sure that the bar made money, the people were drunk, not too drunk, and you got to also manage the tempo of the room to make sure people don't dance themselves out. So I think a lot of that aids me in just passively observing people and knowing whether they need an ice cream sandwich or to be left alone for a second or something like that, because you just start to anticipate what a person needs and what's going to manipulate the room.
This is why artists and entertainers are so extremely important, because to be able to orchestrate atmosphere is truly a skill. And it's not just like it's not just the music that somebody creates, but it's also how it's presented. That's so extremely important. And it's so interesting to hear it from a DJ's perspective, because it's not something that I'm super familiar with. I worked front of house mostly my adult career. And so I understand how to like kind of orchestrate capacity for sure. Right. Like I understand like, what needs to happen and what doesn't need to happen in that sense, but never am I ever responsible for like the music. And so to be able to like manipulate that to create an experience for people directly contributes to mental health, as far as I'm concerned.
I also found one of the biggest things that I learned later on as a DJ was my light cues, like making sure that they synced up with my music and not using things too early in the night to be able to build the tempo and the excitement of the night. So the light cues, for sure, the best way to manipulate like this, the big, huge, you'd see like the 80s rock band where the lights would go on behind them and it would just light up the whole stadium. Give everyone that moment, that pause, of that feeling of being something great, part of something greater.
It's such a beautiful thing. I think people really underestimate and undervalue the effect of the entertainment industry. We consider it like such a luxe market. Oh, it's it's a special thing to be able to go to get tickets to a concert, or it's a luxury item to be able to have subwoofers to contribute to my it is. But at the same time, like if people started looking at it as a therapy, because it is absolutely that. I think I personally obviously advocate for this all the time. I think it's extremely important, but it's nice and refreshing to know that people are very aware of it, especially in their profession, because to be, a DJ and to have that sort of awareness that's a powerful.
Well, I mean, traditionally people used to look at it that way. The old anecdote of a bartender sitting there at the bar cleaning his glass while people pour their hearts out is therapeutic for them. On the same side, more what me and my friends is the dancing, is getting on the floor and just emptying out your heart on the dance floor is very therapeutic.
So when I first started this company, I had somebody who messaged me a very long-winded message about how dare I have the audacity of me to do this. And they're like, where do you get off thinking that like you're qualified for this? And I was like, behind the scenes, I'd actually been going to school for a little while. So, but I don't advertise that, but I was like offended. I'm like, I have been a bartender for 20 years. Like, how much more qualified do you possibly need to be? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, show me somebody more qualified to talk about mental health than I. Like, come on.
yeah, yeah,
Especially in a blue collar town on an isolated island on the west coast of Canada. I mean, honestly.
yeah,
But you know, yeah, it's definitely undervalued. I think people in those positions have a duty to themselves and to their community to be you know, proactive
yeah.
about how they deal with it, and like finding gentle ways to kind of, you know, shoosh people around their lives. And I think you do a great job of that.
Yeah, and I think I don't know, the knee-jerk reaction that who's really qualified to be having this conversation, are we the right people to be championing this cause, is something I've dealt with myself when I was getting ready to do this podcast. But then the number of people in our industry that we've lost in the last 5 years, from COVID, before COVID, and up to now, the industry's changed. The amount of money people are making in that industry has changed. So a lot of my favorite DJs, a lot of people I've worked with at the various nightclubs, are no longer with us. So if they're not here to champion their cause, then at least we are.
Yeah.
You know, and if anything we say helps one person, well, that means it was worth it.
Yeah. It's literally why it's called Pinecase. Like, you know, a smart woman said to me one day, the only thing you are promised is, you know, according to the Canadian government, is a pine box at the end of this. Right. And I was like, holy, like, yeah, okay, you might be right about it.
Yeah,
and then, you know, I had the blessing and the love from a lot of really cool people that are no longer with us, you know, people that were like kind of underestimated, that were like, oh yeah, so-and-so, like, yeah, so-and-so was actually teaching hip hop in our community before there was even a freaking hip hop dance studio. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, that person was out breakdancing in the streets, literally teaching the youth before there was a space. Now it's like a trend. But like, you're talking about some of these people that, you know, Corey Harris is one of them. You know, before Heather Larkham had like a proper dance studio, you know, he was out there doing breakdancing, and she was great at bringing him in and making sure that he had a space. But
we had breakdancing at Jaggers, breakdancing lessons.
Right.
It was funny because we would have the bunch of the people from Campbell River, Corey and Drew, and a bunch of the people would come up, and they needed staff to get started, get the ball rolling. Yeah. So breakdancing is incredibly hard, which a lot of people maybe don't realize. But if you're 220-pound bouncer spinning all that weight on your shoulders, this is not natural. It's very tiring.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing. Dizzy's another one, right? Like Donovan, he's obviously out doing the music thing, and he's been just the most consistent person, as far as I'm concerned, for artists and out of that space. But I mean, going back, like, I remember when, you know, we were young, and I'm like, that, like, he has been doing it for himself, but for other people for so long. Like, you're talking about like incredible amounts of, you know, Pinecase is here to pay homage to those. You know, it really is. That's why we have a bursary and a scholarship program. It's, I mean, you can go on to Scholartree and see that all the people that they're in respects to, and that's why. Because I was like, I'm sick and tired of talking about the way people passed away. We really want to talk about all the cool shit they did while they were here.
Yeah,
you know,
because we always blame ourselves, whether I mean, I don't think we are really to blame, but we always wonder, what could I have done differently? Could I have said something that would have made a difference? And it's just, you know, this is a little more proactive. It's a little getting in front of things. That it's at least, you know, putting the message out there that we all feel these things. We've all gone through these pains. We've all gone through these. Everyone's had a broken arm or a twisted ankle. Everyone goes through mental ebbs and flows. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's funny, like, you don't have to have a solution, you know, all the time. Like, everyone's like, I need to problem solve for this, and it needs to be better. And I'm like, sit with it. Like, just sit with it for a second. Like, it's okay. Like, we need to normalize the behavior enough for people to just sit with it for a second. Like, it's all good, man. You want to, you know, I was like, we were talking before we went live, like, I was chatting with Murray from Deglo Abortions, and he said, like, we need to, well, he said a lot of things, but a lot. But basically, he was saying, like, all of the things that are put into place from like a structure standpoint are there to make us look normal to everybody else.
Yeah.
It's okay not to look normal. It's okay to, like, you know, feel you're weird. If humans do it, it's human nature. Now, take with that what you will. Obviously, there's extremes on both sides. But with that being said, the fact that we like dismiss people because they're dancing in the street is absolutely ridiculous. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
You know, I had, not to make it about myself, but I had a situation where there was, I was public speaking at a shelter in Wetaskiwin or whatever, somewhere around that area. And there were, you know, everyone's like, you know, this and that, talking about the unhoused and I was like, okay, but if you add music or a soccer ball, you know, does it look that crazy anymore? Because people that are sweaty and people that are dancing and people that are like excited and talking loudly, it's really about perspective and perception, you know, like I don't understand why one thing is negative and one thing is positive. It's totally bizarre to me.
I used to have a lead singer in a band I was in, and he'd be riding around the back of my motorbike, and he was a little bit scared to be going fast, and he'd be singing at the top of his lungs the entire time. It did come off as a little crazy, but that was just how he vented his excitement or his energy.
Right.
I'd rather he didn't do it, but you know.
But it's like that like let the steam out of the pot, right? You're like, okay,
exactly.
It's, you know, singing is one of those beautiful things, like, and just like, you know, journalism or writing in any sorts or, you know, whatever. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be loud, but just like getting things out there a little bit is just such a beautiful thing. There's a couple of things that I would love to like keep going on with this conversation, but before we get too far away from it, can you please explain to me why vinyl is so important to you in a world of technology and digital music? Why you like to like, because you said it really kind of briefly as we were going into this conversation, and I was like, oh, you were the only one that played vinyl at the block party in Campbell. What is it?
Digital offers you a lot of benefits as far as being up to date on new music and stuff like that. But I like my mixes don't necessarily have to be up to date, and they don't have to be brand new, and I can mix other things into it. But when you're mixing vinyl, you're physically feeling the beats of the music underneath your fingertips. You can see the grooves in the light on the record player. You can feel the music in your ear that you're mixing from both tracks. Like I played a show at the Queens in Nanaimo, and I, of course, had forgotten my headphones. And just by feeling the grooves of the record going underneath the needle, I was able to mix without headphones. Not great, but it was fine. You know, like I'm more physically attached. And when you take the pieces from both tracks and you mix them together, vinyl, for me, it gives me an emotional feeling of satisfaction. I just feel more connected, and the music is more, I don't know, it just reverberates deep within myself when I'm mixing on vinyl. Like a good mix, you'll see a big smile come across my face before it comes across the speakers, before anybody else, because you'll just feel two things in two tracks, and you'll be mixing it together, and all of a sudden you just feel at peace. You're just taking chaos from both things, mixing it together, and it's just not the same digitally. It's just so much more sterile when I do it digitally. I enjoy it. There's a lot of aspects digitally that you can't do on vinyl. There's a lot of tools and a lot of stuff like drum machines and stuff like that you can use. But when you're mixing two records, for me, it's peaceful. It's just bringing order to the world around you. It's just taking two things, two totally different feelings, two different thoughts, and bringing them together. It's just nothing like it.
Thank you for saying all of that, because as a consumer, you know, or a guest or a patron, I mean, you're absolutely right, you know. And it does feel different. It feels fuller, right? It feels there's like that thickness to it almost. It's like tangible. And absolutely. Not to talk ill of like, you know, of anything else, because obviously you're right. There is a ton of tools and technique and things like that. It's really neat. But I just thought how refreshing. Like, well, how refreshing in a world of all of this to hold true to something that's important to you, to remind the kids of things they probably, I mean, other than DJ Lion, I don't even know if they're, you know, not all kids even know what the hell that even is. Like,
no,
you know?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes across in how when you feel that passionate about the music you're mixing, and you feel so much joy from the mix, it comes across in what you're presenting, whether you realize it or not. You know, you present it, for me, the happiest version of what it is I'm doing. And it's easily comes across after people heard I was going to be doing this. Some people have sent me some of my mixes from back in the old days in Nanaimo and this, that, and the other thing. And you can definitely tell the vinyl sets over the other sets, just based on the happiness and it's a completely different feeling. Like it just, maybe because I got paid to do the top 40 events for so long, is that it became a lot more mechanical for me, is
Yeah.
because it was a lot more for other people than for myself, or doing a lot of events like that. Whereas the smaller raves and stuff like that, I could sometimes present what they wanted, or sometimes present what I wanted. On the vinyl ones, it was always what I wanted.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess you can't really request a song, right? When you got like a
some of my fans that would come to my shows would know some of my tracks.
Yeah.
And they would first, I thought they were making fun of me because they would do a certain dance that I would do to that track. Like, for example, when Call on Me came out by Eric Prydz, it had an old brick phone that I would use and stuff like that, or certain dances. And so I'd see people doing it at first, because there's that whole, you wonder if people are making fun of you. Are they actually here to see me? And then just realizing that no, they were buying me drinks and sending them up, and they were just happy to see me and imitating what I would do during those songs.
Very cool.
So, there are some requests, but not like top 40. You can't be as up to date. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I don't know. I think obviously when you're in like a bar setting, it's challenging because people go into it being like, they want music that they can dance to, music that they know.
But quite often they're celebrating an event that's special to them, and that event has some music tied to it, and they don't, or it's a memorial, or it's an anniversary, or there's some sort of personal attachment, and so you're trying to do your best to celebrate that with them. But another thing about vinyl is when we used to have the Wax Wednesdays, the DJs that were traveling, your record bag only has so many slots in it. It's not like you can have 500 songs or whatever. So if you're traveling, it weighs a lot, and you can only bring so many records. So DJs that were traveling would get rid of about 20 or 30% of their collection while they were traveling in record shops, and pick up 20 to 30% new records. So my friends that were going overseas or whatever, they would come back with these records you could only get over there, with a completely new sound and a completely new feel that you'd never heard before, because it's not available digitally. You could only find it on that record. And as people traveled, their record bags slowly evolved. And it was really an interesting sort of diary of where that DJ had been in the last year.
That is really cool. I did not know
we would have the after parties, and the DJs would come over to the house, and we would all right away go to the white label stuff that was from little studios you'd never heard of, and just be so enthralled by listening to different techniques and different types of mixing different stuff, like some Punjabi stuff. And it was like, "Ooh, what is this?" It was just the greatest. Yeah, it was nice.
That's what music has historically always been, right? It's like the art of storytelling, and I talk about it a lot on the show. Like I shouldn't say we've lost it. I feel like we're really getting back to it now. But historically, music has been the way to communicate what is true to you at that time to everybody else, and also a way to mark down historical events. And so it's really up to like the artist to make sure that there is like current events in the music, whether that's to hide the truth or to advertise the truth, is negotiable. But I never really thought about that in like a vinyl sort of, or a collection sort of way, because the conversations that I've kind of always had up till this point have always been like, this is the music that I made, this is why I made it, and this is where I put it, and not necessarily like this is the music that I collected, and this is the music that and that I gave away, and this is why. And it's really neat to kind of think about people kind of leaving like a breadcrumb trail.
Yeah, absolutely, a piece of themselves too,
of their lives. Like
Well, also when you do it, when you're a vinyl DJ and you do that, I'm giving tracks away to certain people. You're making the effort. You know that you can't play that anymore. That is now out of your repertoire. You can no longer play that track because you gave it away. So that's it. So like sometimes I've played a track and I played it, and certain fans are coming that some battle happened in their life, and even though it's a track I play all the time, I'll be like, all right, now I'll give it off. I'll give it away because it meant a lot to them, and I know I probably won't be seeing them at many more shows. So I'll make that sacrifice and know that I'm never playing that song again.
And then it pushes you to create a new moment. Like now you got to like learn a new track. You got to learn, I don't know what all the technical terms are for them, but like,
no, you're absolutely right,
fade and all that stuff, right? Like, and so now you got to create like a new space in your set for that, and like
the tempo, everything like that. You got to take it back into account and start again. Yeah, figure it out.
I mean, I've always thought about like people creating sets in the way that you're like, okay, you have this sterile environment, you're at home, you got your studio, and you're gonna do all this stuff, and you're gonna like from A to B, A to Z, whatever. But I've never really thought about it in sort of like the traveling musician, like in the moment, kind of the fluidity that really is the music industry. I don't know why it's never really dawned on me. I guess I've been kind of stuck in like maybe a little bit of ignorance when I think of like, you know, an album or like a collection or whatever, right? And and so it's really neat to think
well,
about.
there's things too that I sometimes didn't take into account. Like I'd have a set all prepared, and I'd go to open for an act, and then I'd realize, wait a second, a couple of the tracks in this set are by this act. I probably shouldn't play it right before he goes on stage. So all of a sudden you're scrambling, going, okay, I gotta mix this up somehow. Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, I guess so, right? You're like, oh, I'm a huge fan. I love it. I love to be able to like, you know, push your music forward. But yeah.
You probably don't want me playing your hit right before you go on stage, do you? Yeah.
That's really, really neat. Is there anything along your travels that that kind of stands out to you as like maybe the best, you know, I don't want to say the best moment of your life, obviously that's a tall order, but like kind of one of those moments where like the set hit, the crowd was on point, you're like, I'm never going to be able to duplicate this moment. Like
there has been a few. There was one out at Nanaimo Lakes, and I was playing, and so I played an earlier set, like a peak hour bar type set.
Yeah.
And then I also played a sunrise set where I got to play more down tempo house and stuff like that. And so the crowd had really thinned out, and I was playing away, and just the sun was just setting over the lake at the right angle. Everybody was dancing and was having fun. And I heard somebody on the crowd go, who the hell is that? And then someone said, oh, don't worry about it. That's just DJ Just Robb. So that one time, for some reason, even though it wasn't the biggest venue or the most people, I just felt everything was that perfect in the world at that one moment. The mixes were there was nothing I could do wrong. Like I didn't have a set picked out. I just knew exactly in my mind what was coming next, what was going to blend perfectly. The crowd was loving it. Everybody was dancing and just smiles across the entire crowd. It's nice to do at a show like that because as a DJ's changed, you really mix it up. So the crowd gets bored of one kind of music and then somebody else comes in and mixes into it. And then it was just so well received, you know, to have everybody react. It was nice. Another time was when I got my name DJ Just Robb.
I was going to ask you about that.
There you go. I was just a bouncer before that. And so they asked me to play at Spin Sunday in Nanaimo for Dizzy Matt and Dizzy Productions. And they said, what's your name? And I said, it's Robb. And they're like, well, do you want Robb up there? I'm like, yeah, just Robb. Because they put Robb the Bouncer. And I'm like, no, don't put Robb the Bouncer. Then everyone's going to think I'm trying to be a tough guy. And that's not what I want to do. I just want to play music. So like, you want just Robb? I'm like, yeah, just Robb. And so I showed up. And of course, I think it was tongue in cheek. I think it was on purpose. Because they're good friends of mine. I look up on the marquee and it's just Robb. I'm like, well, there we go. There we go. And it stuck from that time on.
I was wondering about that because I was like, in a world where it's great to have, you know, a stage name, but it's also great to be able, especially with like, you know, because you slid right into the social media thing, to be able to use like your actual name and then to have some whatever. All that stuff is great. But I was like, there is actually quite a few Robbs out there that are in the music industry. Like there's Robbie, you know, Robbie G, there's Robbie Robb, there's there's you. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's actually two Robb Gs. There's Robb G and Robbie G. There's just Robb.
And I
Robbie
DJed with the Robb G as well at 7 as well.
Robb
G there.
Yeah. See, and like I'm like, and it's beautiful because I mean, it's great. You look for one, you get to find new music with the other one, and yada yada. The list goes on. I love it.
Yeah.
But to be DJ Just Robb, what I found interesting about that is I was like, because it's so simple and you're not it's not overcomplicated. I feel
not overselling.
Like then I get to go into it like music first, like experience first. There's no, I mean, it's great now and it's totally tongue in cheek and I think it served you well. But the experience that I thought that I was going to have when showing up to one of, you know, a show that you were at or one of your shows or whether for whatever reason was I was like, this guy is music first. He's like experience first. He's here for me to have a good time, you know? And
there's no name to hide behind with that.
No. Like, I think it's genius. So I'm really glad to hear that story.
I had some promoters and back when I had management and stuff like that in place and sponsorship stuff, there were some people that were against the name because they thought it was too small compared to what I do on stage and how much of a show I was putting on. But at the same time, once you're already down that path, it's kind of hard to change your name. You've been playing for 10 years, you know, people are going to come to your shows. You change your name, all of a sudden it makes it tricky, especially like you said, when there's 20 Robbs in the industry.
Yeah. I honestly think that it does. I don't know why you would need more because it is actually a lot. You know what I mean? Like there is, I mean, you're still looking with, you got 3 words up in there. I mean, just as the whole thing, like, why would you, I don't know why. I mean, no shade or hate to that person, but
Yeah.
nothing sits better than an organic
Right.
moment like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
how,
For
like,
me, it was always, I've never needed to be anything else. I'm like, this is
yeah,
all I've needed.
yeah,
There we go.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me show speak for itself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
I played I played a show in Victoria,
Mhm.
and they were worried like it was for a burlesque group, and it was the opening of a bar. And some of the
Okay.
people there knew me because I was their football coach, and they'd been to a lot of my events.
Yep.
And so they decided to have me for the grand opening and for the burlesque show, and they were worried that because the owners had never heard of me, they were giving me all these things to memorize and all the things about the people that were performing. I'm like, if you give me all this stuff, I'm going to sound terrible.
Right.
Just let me go on stage and do my thing. And then just because I am who I am and I wanted to sort of egg them on, I started off with Singing in the Rain. So I played it on vinyl, and then I looked up like it was an accident, and then broke it down and started making a mix out of it. And then everyone just blew up. And then everyone was at ease. Because I'm like, if they're uncomfortable, they're going to be analyzing me for the first 10, 15 tracks. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off, make it look like the worst nightmare has just come true, and then completely flip it around on them.
Oh,
and so everybody just went to ease after that. Yeah.
Oh, that's, I love that. I mean, I live in that space 24/7 because people are like, she's middle-aged, she's Black, she's, well, I mean, anyone in Campbell River is probably watching this being like, we know who you are. Which is fine. I don't mind because, you know, I'm out in the middle of Canada, just like living my best life. But, you know, I feel like even the one of the first big jobs that I had, it was, you know, it was taking it away from like an elderly white guy. And everyone knows that I love to love, and it's not a race thing. But when people have like an idea in their mind of what to expect, and then you rip that Band-Aid off, there is nothing more flattering to a room than knowing your worth and knowing exactly what needs to be done to be like, we're all just people, man. Like, we're all just people in this space. It's all good. And so to have a moment like that is just, that's what life's about in my opinion.
Being underestimated is a huge asset for me. I've used it as a bouncer, used it as a DJ. Yeah. I mean, my flyers and stuff like that, you want to present a big show.
Of course.
But for the rest of it, I'd like to be underestimated and then present something that blows their doors off. If you are overestimated, you're in trouble. If you're underestimated, then you can impress them. If you're overestimated, you're screwed.
It's so true. It's so true. It's so true. I mean, I work, like, obviously I work in mental health and music, but horses is like where like maybe I'm the most selfish. I don't have to share it with anybody. Sometimes it brings in some money, sometimes it doesn't, but ultimately it's like, you know, it's my thing. And when you want to talk about a culture that has always looked a certain way, I'm not a stereotypical image of what, you know, of a cowgirl or even equestrian at all. And so, I have a lot of fun kind of strolling into that situation and actually maybe knowing kind of like what I'm doing. I love it. But it's fun. Yeah. Very cool. So in your, I mean, I don't want to say like what's coming up for you and all that stuff because I don't want to put any heavy pressure on it, but I do want to know, how does it feel to be back in the industry a little bit? Like, how did it feel to kind of, you know, rip your own Band-Aid off and get back into the swing of things? Because it had been a little while.
It had been a little while. I think it was a little nerve-wracking. I have 2 kids. And so my first son sort of, me and his mother parted ways. And so he was down in Victoria and we've lost touch with each other. And I was really worried that the aspects that my first kid's mother didn't like about me were going to be impede me in my ability to father my second kid. So when my first son was first born, I was still performing at the Voodoo. I get off work at 2 a.m, or I get off work at the hospital at 11 at night, go to the Voodoo, and then whoever was opening for me, I would take over on stage and play for the end of the night. But I didn't want to have a childhood for my son where either he was worried about me, because a lot of time around Christmas and Halloween, you have black eyes and you have, you know, bruised elbows and scratches on your throat and stuff. And you don't want any of that. And there were some incidents where I was badly hurt and in the hospital for quite a while. And I didn't want my son to worry about me. So now that he's 7 and a little bit older, and this chance to came up to play for Pinecase at the block party in Campbell River, it was something that I really believed in. And when I went there, nobody recognized me because I did take the longest hiatus I've ever taken. And then Matt Surreal and Peter Poole, and everyone's like, holy crap, that's Robb Poole. And so then everyone gave me a big warm shout out, and everyone came up and said hi, and it was nice. So my son and I have been playing together and started practicing together. And there are things that I'm going to start doing again, start playing at clubs again and start doing scenes again. But it's just a slow transition back into, I don't think that being a DJ necessarily brought out the worst in me, and I don't think it brought out the best in me. But there was environments that I just want to be careful as a dad that I wasn't imposing on my child. I don't think that that's happening now, and I don't think that even if I was still working at the bar in the exact same situation, I would have brought any sort of negativity to my kid on purpose.
Of course, no.
Yeah, once the show's over and I get off stage, my drink gets poured down the sink, and I walk off, and I'm done. But now my son's a little bit older; he's 7, and he's got he's got his feet underneath him. I don't have to worry about that so much. So now I've started pursuing stuff again. And I think playing with my son will be the first couple shows, because I think that would be fun to do. Like at the Pinecase one, I played with someone I coached in football. So
right.
Oh. So I've known him since the 90s. So I coached him when he was just a tiny guy, and I've known him ever since, him and his whole family. So I think now I'm pursuing more stuff where I can play vinyl, play more of the music that I want to play, and not get sucked into that whole industrial doing the same stuff every night, the top 40, same music at the same time. Not there's anything wrong with it, and you can do it, and you can do it well, but it's a big commitment. And I have jobs, and I have a life, and I have everything else, and I don't have enough time, spare time to commit to that time. Plus, I'm older, so I kind of want to go to bed by a certain time. Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand you there. That's for sure. That's great. I mean, all of that is great. It's great to be able to like come back into that space, and with, you know, a little bit older, what does my mom say? A little bit older, uglier, and wiser. You know, and it's so true, right? Like, it's so nice to be able to come back to that space and be like, you know what, this is what we can do, and we can inspire young people to be able to play a show with, you know, with somebody that you can maybe like pass the torch to, especially somebody like your son or somebody in your personal life.
Yeah. And plus, it's nice that I've played long enough that I still have enough credentials that the people that are running the shows now all recognize me, and it's very easy to get a show. So that's nice, and it's easy to get a show playing the music that I feel like playing. So that it wasn't always the case. Like when I was DJing, I was living off my DJing. So in order to make enough money to sustain myself, I had to take lots more shows than I would normally take. So this way, by doing it just on the side, I'm able to take the shows that I want to take, do the projects I want to do. Yes, it's great.
Yeah, quality over quantity. But you've done that though, right? You put in the sweat equity to like earn that space amongst everybody else, right? Like, that goes without saying. It was a no-brainer for me, and I know, you know, I've had the privilege of like hanging out with a lot of what's going on the West Coast right now, and when I think back to like what that looks like, you're definitely a part of it. Like, that goes without saying. I mean, it doesn't really matter what capacity anybody was doing it in. The amount of sweat equity that you guys have all put in there is it's just like, you know, it's amazing. And to like look back at it and realize that like we all get to like pay homage to you guys, that like the time's already been done. You know what I mean? Now you guys get to like roll in, do a couple of things, show the kids roll out, right? Like
No, it's nice too. And also that was one of the benefits about being at a top 40 bar in a smaller town like Campbell River, Nanaimo, or Courtney at the time we did it, is that on certain nights of the week we would have different genres. So we got to know the hip hop acts that were coming up. We got to know the Globetrotters recognized me for quite a few years. You know, things like that where you wouldn't normally have that at all your shows. You know, we have house music nights on Sundays. We would have break music nights. You know, those kinds of things. You got exposed to so many groups of different types of music, or even open mic nights or jam nights, or the live bands that we did. So like I've had a chance to perform. Not a lot of DJs have done scratching and performed with live rock and roll bands.
No.
And then have also performed with, say, Two Live Crew, and have also performed with other stuff like that. It gives you a lot of opportunity to try out everything, to, you know, become comfortable in all those situations. So that was one good aspect of it.
Oh, you know what? It's amazing. Like, as you're saying that, I'm like, man, now it's kind of what it is. Like, you got people like, you know, Merc and Jelly and all these guys that have just like smashed genres together. You know, and I mean, I'm out in Alberta, and I literally see like country boys all the time who have never really left their 100-year farm, and they're like, "Oh, you heard this song?" And I'm like, what, dude? Yeah, no, what? Like, I've been listening to that guy since he was like playing, you know, outside on the street, outside the Commodore. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, I've known that guy since he was like busking. Like, what do you? Yeah, exactly. I know who that is. Yeah. But it's like it's amazing because everybody, you know, like you, well, obviously you included. I'm talking about you right now. Like to be able to do that and kind of like create the space. You allowed all of us to get comfortable to listening to those things together. And that's what, I mean, we're talking like years ago, you know?
Yeah.
And so to be able to say that and to be like, yeah, we already did all that, you know?
Yeah, 28 years of back-to-back shows. Sometimes when I was in Nanaimo, I was doing 3 shows a day at 3 different venues on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So you add that up, that's a lot of shows.
Man, it's a lot of freaking music. Like,
that's a lot of people.
A lot of people.
200 to 500 people a show for 28 years is a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a lot of life. Like it's really neat. I feel so blessed. I'm sitting here like, you know, almost fangirling up because it's like to think about you know, people's lives as entertainers and then to look, now you're in a space to like look back at it and be like, we really did all of that.
Yeah.
Like all of that is just such an amazing thing. So from the bottom of my heart, like thank you.
Something that really struck me as odd in the past few years is when you're performing as a DJ or anybody that's entertaining on stage, you're trying to connect with somebody emotionally in the crowd and they're feeding on what you're doing and you're feeding on what they're doing and you sort of elevate each other. But it is just music and a lot of people don't give it a lot of credit. But as people are going through a lot of crisis these days, what surprised me is the number of people that reach out to me to ask for help or ask for my opinion or to give them some comfort or some solace when they only know me from DJing. That's our only experience of knowing each other. So maybe it's because it's a little more anonymous because the people in their lives, they're worried might judge them. Or maybe it's because we connected emotionally. But for some reason, the number of people that reach out to me when they're in crisis is shocking. And our only connection was that I used to play music in places they used to attend.
It's for sure the connection, but I also think it's the consistency.
Yeah.
You know, like when I don't think people actually take into consideration when we're sitting here talking about hours. I mean, even if I use myself as an example, you know, you're talking, say you throw out a number like from high school to college, like 2-3 years, 2-3 summers even.
Yeah.
You know, and say Friday and Saturday night.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's a lot of partying. Like when you really like, that's a lot of partying.
Yeah.
But when you think, okay, so then you put like, so you're at the bar, you get there maybe at like 10:30, you're out of there by like 2.
Yeah.
4. You're probably like 8 hours.
2 if you're lucky. Maybe 2:30, 3. Yeah.
It's usually like 4, but like, you know, by the time we're like, you know, got our progies and are like
legally at 2.
Right? Yeah, totally. We're like hanging out in the park, right? And so like you're talking like 4 to 6 hours, you know, twice a week for how many months? How many years? Like that's more than I go to my therapist. That's more than I go to my counselor.
Yeah.
That's more than I proactively seek you know, yoga or guided meditation or sound bowls or retreats. Any of that. You can compile all of that. It's still gonna be a fraction of the amount of time that we've all put into music.
Yeah.
There's, you know, it doesn't even compare. So to turn around and be like, these people trust me. Yeah, we trust you. Of course we trust you. Of course we rely on, you know, you and everybody else. Of course, because that, you know, you've been a staple. You've navigated us through these experiences. We've laughed together. We've cried together. We've had, you know, ups and downs together. I mean, that's what happens when, you know, on the dance floor. And so, yeah, I could vouch for that. I know exactly why people reach out to you, you know, the same reason why I would do it is because it's the consistency.
Yeah, I guess. Sure. And if you put it that way, I have seen them at their highs and at their lows.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, definitely at their lows. Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you add like, you know, in those environments, like we're not at our finest, you know, you can get dolled up and you can feel good and you can go and dance your butt off and that's fine. But people get married and divorced at a bar.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? People, you know, we have these moments and then these losses and these heartbreaks. And because we're, you know, intoxicated and we're stimulated and overstimulated, it's like And then, not to take it to like this really scary place, but some of us have actually lost people at the bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, that really was a thing. That really did happen to some of us, you know?
Yeah, it did.
And
That was actually
so,
how I got a lot of my jobs, was when bars were needing to change their the feel of the bar, because
mm,
some traumatic or bad thing happened and they needed to
yeah,
rebrand. Because as good as you are, after a certain number of years, they want something new, especially in, like, say, in Nanaimo, where there'll be 2 or 3 or 4 competing nightclubs.
mhm.
So when they wanted to change it up, that's when they would bring me, and that's why they brought me to Courtney, and that's why they brought me back to Courtney after 4 or 5 years not being there. You know, it's just
Right,
to
right.
mix it up. It was nothing against the people whose position I took, but it was a bit of a thing, because that person was popular, that person was well liked, and all of a sudden I had their job,
Mhm.
and it's just like, yeah. So it was a bit of a transition. People like me and Robb, we did it pretty seamlessly. Like
Yeah.
there was a group of us at the Voodoo, me, Robbie, Bryan, and there was a couple others, but we were the main DJs there for quite a while. And we would seamlessly tag off to each other as our lives took different turns. We did different things, and you had to be able to do something like that while honoring each other's,
Mm,
reputations, and
mhm.
also having some continuity, but also sounding different. So the three of us would quite often do shows together, just as we were passing off the gauntlet and taking turns. Also, you get burned out. You can't have your foot on the gas 24 hours a day for every single day. You get wiped out.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, I respect that for sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's great. It's great to have people in it, I don't even know. I'm like stuttering because it's like, to have that with people in that industry it just doesn't happen like that. And so to
Yeah.
be able to offer that, especially to, the island, which is already a secluded area,
Yeah.
I think was really important for a lot of us, actually, because as much as I talked about like the consistency, um, because you guys did that so seamlessly, and maybe we should bring more attention to that, actually, but because you guys did that so seamlessly for so many years, it actually kind of extends what we really do think of that time frame, right?
It
Because
does.
now I
Yeah.
don't really know. Yeah, yeah,
Because there was no division. Like other places
yeah.
I played, when I showed up, the old staff would it became a lot like very much like a reality TV show, where I was like, these are the new person's fans and these are the old DJ's fans. And how
Ooh,
dare this
right.
person come in here? I'm like, I didn't get rid of him. I had nothing to
Mhm.
do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a lot more controversial. I mean, eventually I won them over, but whereas here at the Voodoo, it was definitely more just seamless. We all were on the same team. We all wanted what was best.
Yeah.
So we would all help out in that way.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Very neat. Oh, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Honestly, thank you for hanging out with us. I know at the beginning you were like, "Oh, I'm feeling like a little,
Yeah.
excited or whatever."
It was outside of my comfort zone for sure.
Yeah. But I do appreciate you taking the time, because, like I said at the beginning, it's super important to have these conversations. It's important for people to know that they're not alone in their feelings, and I honestly just enjoy like being able to kind of reminisce about some of that stuff. For me, it's a little bit more personal than to maybe some of the people watching, but yeah, the island is definitely going through a lot right now. The West Coast is going through a lot right now. BC, I'm not really sure if, from a political standpoint, and I don't want to get too much into it because I've been pulling my reels left, right, and center, but with some of these initiatives like Recover Out Loud, and maybe some of the more traditional ones like One Day at a Time, and all of that, it's been a little bit jarring, and
It has been, yeah.
And
Especially,
I
work at the hospital, and I also have my performances and my friends, because there has been a couple other shows I've played recently as well in Nanaimo and stuff, and it's definitely, a lot has changed. There's a lot more suffering, I think, out there, and a lot more people that are not being left behind, but there's a lot of struggle, and it's tough.
Yeah, Campbell River, the West Coast is beautiful, and it doesn't need to be tragic for everybody. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there just living their lives, and that's wonderful. And thank goodness, But for those who are, waking up in addiction this morning, or aren't waking up from their addiction this morning, those numbers are getting horrendously large. The statistics aren't just they aren't just the seedy fringe underbelly anymore. the whatever you want to call it, the disease, the epidemic, whatever. I don't care what people call it. To be quite honest, it just doesn't discriminate against anybody, and my heart just absolutely shatters for that whole for the whole West. I mean, I know it's everywhere, but specifically for the West Coast right now.
Agreed.
Yeah. I really wish that we could look at it a little bit differently. I think they were having the right conversation, but just not in the right room. You know what I mean? Okay, we were kind of onto something there. I don't know if that's quite maybe the way to do it. I think we've made leaps and bounds in a lot of ways. Obviously, locking people up for these life decisions or whatever is absolutely ridiculous. So to get away from some of that is wonderful. But
being locked up doesn't take them away from the drugs. They're still there.
No, exactly. I've actually, you know what? I lost somebody very near and dear to me who literally tested positive after being released, and because they tested positive, they couldn't go into their program. And it was the first time that they had been, free, so to speak, in years. And I'm like, you have somebody that tested hot and then you sent them on their own.
Yeah. It's the person. Oh, this person needs the most help. Okay, off you go. Yeah.
Where is that? Why is that okay? Why are we turning people away? Because the problem is the detox beds. The problem is that, and not only is it hard to get there, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Detoxing is dangerous. So why are we turning people away from these programs because they can't put in 72 hours, man? Come on.
Absolutely.
Ugh. If anybody is out there, if you guys need an naloxone kit, Calico Hunt has a whole. I don't know if she still has a bunch of them, but we'll throw the links everywhere. I know that they're all over the place, but we will do another live where we do a demonstration. And sorry to take over your live a little bit, but while we're here, we might as well throw up where you guys can find a naloxone kit. Shoppers Drug Mart has them on hand, and Vancouver Island. Yeah, go ahead.
So there's the emergency room at the hospital. Come on down and grab it.
Yep. Emergency room at the hospital. And I'll throw a link down there if you guys want to be able to pick one up where it's a little bit more discreet. I actually had somebody look at an naloxone kit the other day and be like, should I be worried? And I was like, worried about what?
Exactly.
And they're like, oh, there's not drugs in there. I'm like, no.
When I played at that Pinecase block party, I brought one with me.
Oh, good.
I didn't think I would need it, but you're better off having it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I give them out to everyone, the truck drivers, everyone that I come across. I'm like, take one of these, throw them in your cars, whatever. The day after my naloxone training, I literally used it. The next day, I found somebody. It's just like, oh,
nice.
Yeah. Anyways, I won't take up any more of your time. DJ, just Rob, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Happy Friday, my dear. I hope you stay safe and take care. And if there's anything that you need from me or Pinecase in general, please let me know. Would love to have you back on whenever you have time down the road. We can link up and see what's going on and all of that good stuff. I know there's a couple of things happening in Campbell River. I think it'll be really exciting to see what happens indoors throughout the winter time. There's some really great projects that are coming together and some really great West Coast hip hop talents that are coming together in those projects. So I'm really excited. So we'll stay posted about all of that. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. For everyone out there, you guys stay safe, take care, and we will see you next Tuesday.
We stay strong. With the strength of 1,000 elephant and the strength of 1,000 tiger, we stay strong. We stay strong. We stay strong. I can see, run to the light at the end of the tunnel winner. We stay strong. I can't breathe. We're gonna get oxygen without the justice system. We stay strong. And I know, gotta keep my head together. We stay strong. Don't doubt me. please don't doubt me.
We stay strong.
Tell me how can we be strong if we still shooting? Tell me how can we be strong if we still looting? Tell me how can we be strong if we still hating? Please tell me now. Please tell me now. Tell me how can we be strong if we're still divided? Tell me how can we be strong with egos inflated? Tell me how can we be strong with so much hunger? Please tell me now. Please tell me now.
The strength of 1,000 lion and the strength of 1,000 giant. Please stay strong. Please stay strong. With the strength of 1,000 elephant and the strength of 1,000 tiger, we stay strong. We stay strong. We stay strong.